Now, a lawsuit is a very serious thing. A lawsuit is basically going to war with a fellow citizen. It's the legal way to go to war. It's the legal way to inflict all kinds of damage on one of your peers. Now, if you decide to go into a lawsuit, you better have thought it out really, really well, okay? It's no time to fuck around and no time to wing it. And you have to act as rationally as possible if you're ever involved in a civil suit. In this video, I'm going to discuss it. See, in my own case, I've been involved in a number of lawsuits over the years. I've never been sued. I've been the one suing people for various reasons. I think that I was justified in the lawsuits that I filed, and well, in all of them except one, I settled, okay? Because most lawsuits get settled. The one lawsuit that went all the way took 14 months, and it cost me enormously on an emotional level. I won the case. And I won a hefty check, as a matter of fact, but it cost me enormously. And the reason it went to trial was actually my mistake, and I'll get into that in just a minute. Now, the first thing you have to understand when you get into a lawsuit, okay, is that you want it to be over as quickly as possible. It's like a war. Nobody wants a war of attrition. You want a quick victory, okay? A quick victory or a quick capitulation. Okay? Now that might sound a little cowardly, that you want to surrender as quickly as possible, but you do. In a lawsuit, you do. And let me explain. Suppose, let's take the following situation. You are being sued, and you are in the wrong. You're in the wrong for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. You're in the wrong. The guy suing you, the plaintiff, is in the right. Okay? Okay. Now let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that the plaintiff is arguing that you fucked him over for $500,000, just for the sake of argument, just to make the math easy, okay? And let's suppose that the cost of going to trial, of doing everything necessary in the lawsuit and finally going to trial and going before a judge and making it all happen is going to cost you around $100,000. Just again, I'm making numbers up, but they're not out of left field. They're sort of reasonable. It usually does cost around $100,000 to go to trial, sometimes more. Okay, and suppose that you have that $100,000 and the guy suing you also has $100,000. You know for a fact that he does. Okay, so if you're in the wrong, well, that's the first thing you have to do. You have to put hand to heart and say to yourself, am I in the right or am I in the wrong? Okay? I mean, not the shit that you tell your friends and neighbors, but the honest, God's honest truth. Are you in the right or are you in the wrong? Now, if you're in the wrong and you admit to yourself and you really are in the wrong, and this guy is suing you with cause, and he's suing you for $500,000, right? And he's got the money, and you've got the money to defend yourself. This is what you have to do. You have to settle as quickly as possible. You have to settle as quickly as possible. I mean, I'm talking that you get the complaint in your hand, in your lawyer's office, and you look through it, and you see what it's about, and you see that it's what you thought it was about, right? And that you are in the wrong. You just lower the papers and look at your lawyer, and you tell him, settle. Let's settle as quickly as possible. That's how quickly you want to settle it, okay? And there are a number of reasons for this, and let me explain. You see, in a legal process, the longer it goes on, the more the parties feel that they have invested in it. I did a video called the sunk cost fallacy. It's very important that you watch it. Because see, sunk cost a lot of times leads people to do really stupid shit. Okay? Now, a lot of times you can be in a lawsuit and you've spent so much time and money and effort and brain power on the lawsuit that you do not want to back off. Okay? That you want to go to trial. It gathers a momentum all of its own because of the sunk cost fallacy. You've thrown so much money and time and effort into something that you cannot afford to walk away. You've got to see it all the way. But at the beginning of a process, when you've just gotten the complaint, right, and you know that you're in the wrong and the other guy's in the right, the other guy, the plaintiff, he's going to be at his most tentative. And so he'll be willing to accept a very well negotiated discount on the sum that he's wanting from you, okay? Say that he wants $500,000, he files a lawsuit, you know, he psychs himself up for this process, and you call him right away and say, I want to settle, and I'll pay you $250,000 right now. Right now, right the fuck now, I'll pay you $250,000 instead of the $500 that you want, and we can settle this right now, and we don't have to go to trial and all the rest of it. Okay? What's going to happen from the point of view of the plaintiff is he's going to be thinking, oh man, maybe I should. Because the lawsuit is a process, and it takes a long time. It takes a year sometimes longer, sometimes years, sometimes decades, okay? Depending, and we'll get to that in a moment. But see, if some guy is suing you, and you say that you'll settle right away, think of it from a game theory's perspective. If you go to trial and you know that you're in the wrong, and more likely than not, the judge is going to see that you're in the wrong, you're going to have to pay $500,000 to the plaintiff, plus $100,000 to your lawyers. And if you're in a jurisdiction where the loser in a lawsuit has to pay the winner his legal fees, you're going to have to throw another $100,000 towards the plaintiff. 500 plus 100 plus another 100 for his fees, $700,000, right? But if you, instead of paying him $700,000 and a year of aggravation with this fucking lawsuit, right? You pay him, you say, I want to settle it as quickly as possible for $250,000. Say at this point your legal fees, again to make the math easy, your legal fees so far have been only like say $15,000 or probably even less. I mean, if you just get the complaint, okay, and nothing else, and you tell your lawyer we're going to settle this fucker, he's probably not going to charge you more than $5,000, okay? It's going to be relatively cheap because you're not going to go into the whole discovery process and depositions and all that shit, which is time consuming, i.e. a lot of billable hours. No. If you decide to settle, there's going to be nothing. There's just going to be negotiating with the counterparty, right? So it'll probably be about $5,000 that you'll wind up paying to your attorney. Okay, again, to make it, maybe a round number, $10,000, fine, $10,000, okay? Shitloads less than $100,000, right? Of going to trial? Yeah, so you pay the guy $250,000 and your attorney $10,000. So it's going to be what? $260,000 total. $260,000 total is $440,000 less than you'd have to pay after a year of aggravation. You see what I mean? So the logic dictates that if you're in the wrong, and you know that you're in the wrong, and you know that the other guy has the money to take it all the way to trial, then you settle. You settle as quickly as possible. Get it in your rearview mirror. Yeah. No reason to stretch it out if you're in the wrong. Okay? Now, suppose that the other guy you think is in the wrong. You're in the right, and he's in the wrong. Okay? Here it gets tricky. See, it'll depend on how much money the other guy has and how much money you have. Okay? Let me explain. Suppose you're suing a guy who, in the same hypothetical, he fucked you over for $500,000, which is a lot of money. And you have $100,000. Okay? You definitely have it. And he definitely has $100,000 to go to trial, right? Okay. So you have to figure out, well, what's worth my while? Does he have $100,000 to go to trial? Yes, he does. Does he have the $500,000 to pay me? And this is important. See, because it's no good for you to sue somebody who doesn't have the money to pay you. Lots of times I've been in situations where, and recently as a matter of fact, where I had the opportunity to sue somebody, but it would have been pointless because the guy didn't have the money to pay me if I won. So why would I bother? And I knew for a fact that he didn't have the money, okay? And so if you are in the right and he is in the wrong, but he doesn't have the money, okay, you got to open the door to negotiations, to settlement as quickly as possible. You got to do that, okay? Because see, if you go to trial and you win a judgment against him of $500,000, he'll declare bankruptcy. And in a lot of jurisdictions, he declares bankruptcy, and the debt he owes you becomes one more debt in a long list of debts. And a lot of times, a lot of clever guys, what they will do when they see that they are going to lose a lawsuit, they will start moving their assets around in such a way that they are untouchable and put them in the names of their mother-in-law and their wife and their dog and whomever. And, at the end of the trial, yeah, you won, but the guy is bankrupt. And so, you're shit out of luck, right? You see what I mean? So you got to figure out if he's got the money to pay. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the guy is worth, say, 20 million. You guesstimate he's worth 20 million, okay? Then in that situation, it's worthwhile to go all the way. Yeah, sure, because he's got the money. And he's not going to destroy his life for the sake of welshing on the money he owes you. In point of fact, a guy like that who has $20 million net worth, right? And he owes you $500,000, what he'll likely do is try to settle as quickly as possible. Because his net worth of $20 million and he owes you $500,000, that's basically 1/40th, 2.5% of his net worth. He's not going to risk it all over that. That would be foolish, right? Yeah. So that guy who's got 20 million in net assets, right, and he owes you 500,000, he'll try to settle with you as quickly as possible if he's smart. Now, if he's a fool, he'll go to trial and lose, and but he's not going to bankrupt himself. You see what I'm saying? And that's why it's important to figure out how much money the other guy's got. Now, what happens if it's a company? And a company that isn't worth 20 million, it's worth, say, 200 million. And they got a big legal budget or whatever, right? Then it gets really tricky. Because this is what's going to happen. They're going to be making calculations about you, how much money you've got to go all the way. So a lot of times it's smart to basically, grab your stack of cash and wave it around so that they see that you've got it, And one of the smart moves that you can do is that you can put all of the money that you have that you can afford on the lawyer, you put it with the lawyer on retainer. Say that you've got $100,000 to spend, and you just put the 100 grand with the attorney, right? Right away, the full amount, not dribs and drabs. No. You put the full 100,000, and you tell the attorney that he's authorized to say that you've got the money to go all the way, and you tell that to the company, okay? Because a lot of times you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to show that you've got the wherewithal to take this to the final consequence, to the judge. Okay? If you're in the right and the company has deep pockets, what are they going to do? If the company has deep pockets, they're going to try to stretch this out. See? If they owe you $500,000, right? They're going to calculate, and this is a correct calculation, that it is worth their while to spend $100,000 on legal fees and then another $100,000 on the appeal. Even though in most appeals processes, you have to park the money that would go to the settlement, you have to park it with the judge or whatever. There are different mechanisms in different jurisdictions, right? But a big company that's worth 200 million and up, right? They're going to say, yeah, I'll park the money there, so what? And I'll just keep on stretching out the process endlessly. Because remember, for accounting purposes, for many corporations, especially publicly traded corporations, money that has been parked in escrow in lieu of a settlement while the appeals process goes on is still considered, accounting-wise, an asset. Okay? So from the accounting point of view of a corporation, that money is not a loss. So they'll keep on throwing money at the trial and then the appeal and the appeal of the appeal, and however long it takes to stretch this process out as long as possible until you run out of money. Yeah, that's what they're going to be doing. They're going to be stretching it out as long as possible until you run out of money. And they're going to calculate that their pockets are deeper than yours. Okay? So you have to fight dirty with that in that kind of a situation. You're fighting up against a corporation. It's not enough to have the money to fight them. What you have to do is that you have to bring in other aspects. Public relations. You got to spend money on public relations to make it ugly for them. Ugly, yeah. Because a company, they're not afraid of a lawsuit, but they are afraid of bad PR. If bad PR starts coming their way because of this lawsuit, they'll settle. And they'll pay you, okay? I mean, you got to understand, see, it's all strategizing, okay? Now, there's a final note, and this is a bitter pill that I have to tell you, but it's the truth. See, I know a lot of cases, where the guy was in the right. The plaintiff was in the right. And the defendant was in the wrong. Okay? But the lawsuit destroyed the plaintiff. Guys I know. Okay? and it ruined them. And let me tell you what happened. See, a lawsuit is a rabbit hole. A lawsuit can suck your entire energy and emotional capital, all of your money. Your entire life can get sucked into this rabbit hole of a lawsuit. And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how smart men have lost everything that they spent a lifetime building over a lawsuit that they were sure that they could win. I mean, it's a horrible fate, and there are lots of accounts everywhere. People I know personally who went down a rabbit hole of a lawsuit and lost everything. It broke them. It really did. Because see, a lot of times you're going to be suing somebody who's just stronger than you. And in lawsuits, money is the measure of strength. Okay? A lot of times you're going to be suing or want to sue somebody who's just got deeper pockets than you, and you're going to lose. And so you got to avoid it. You got to avoid that, and you got to step back and say, no, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to blow my entire life. Even though I'm in the right, the emotional cost is just not worth it. Okay? You gotta make that cold-hearted decision. Now, in my own case, in the lawsuit that went on for 14 months, which I ultimately won. See, there, in that situation, I made the mistake of not making it clear to my opponent that I had the money to go all the way. And so he stretched out the process. He stretched it out, and like lots of depositions and lots of bullshit and just a lot of discovery process and blah, blah, blah. A lot of money wasted, a lot of time wasted. 14 months. And we eventually got to the judge. We literally got to the door of the judge, and we were all set. And he calls up and he wants to settle. And we settled, okay? But see, that was my mistake. I didn't flash the cash. I didn't show that I had the wherewithal to go all the way. And the guy kept thinking, my opponent kept thinking, that if you stretched it out a little bit longer, I'd cave. And that was one of the most difficult processes of my life because, see, he stretched it out, my opponent, the defendant. I was the plaintiff. He stretched it out. And for me, it was just a knot in my stomach every day. Every day of having to deal with this fucking lawsuit. It was just a fucking nightmare. And from there, I learned a lesson. And this is the lesson. When you decide that you're going to go into a lawsuit, okay, the lawyer you hire is crucial. Okay? Don't go cheap. No. Go for the expensive lawyer. Go for the expensive lawyer who has the reputation for being a killer. A guy who's a fucking murderer, a mass murderer. You want a mass murderer of a lawyer, okay? You want a guy who takes no prisoners, who just gobbles them up alive, okay? That's the kind of guy you want, number one. And if you have to pay more, you pay more. Don't go cheap on a lawyer, never. There are lots of other things in life that you can go cheap on, you know? Cheap junk food, cheap this, cheap that, but on the lawyer, never. Never go cheap. Always pay top dollar for proven quality, okay? Number one. And number two, the kind of lawyer that you hire, you want him to be a guy who will handle it and not want any input from you. Let me explain. See, there are attorneys who sort of like invite you into the case, who invite you to participate in the case. And why not? From their point of view, it's more billable hours. Yeah, see, because every time they write, like a daily little update as to what's going on with your lawsuit, every time they spend the 10 minutes, those 10 minutes are billable. They're going to charge you every time they send you a fucking email, okay? So you do not want a lawyer who sort of like invites you into the process. Rather, you want a lawyer who will handle everything. And what you want to tell this lawyer is that you don't want him to ever contact you unless there is a specific reason to, i.e. you have to go and be deposed, i.e. there is a specific decision that has to be made. I mean, for very precise reasons. But insofar as the actual mechanics of the lawsuit, you do not want to know anything about it. You want the lawyer to handle everything. All you want to know is when is it that you are going to get an update, like in 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whenever, okay? You don't want daily debriefings or updates or not even weekly shit, okay? You want the guy to handle the whole thing. It's sort of like this. It's sort of like, you're getting brain surgery, and do you want to talk to the brain surgeon while he's doing brain surgery on you? No. You want the fucker to, do the operation while you're blissfully asleep on anesthetics, right? Exactly. With a lawyer, with your lawyer, you want him to handle it, and you don't want to know about it. You want to focus your life on other things. The people you love, your business, your friends, your life. You want to enjoy life. You don't want the lawsuit to reduce your attention and own your mind, because that happens. It happened to me, so I know whereof I speak. You do not want that to happen. You want the lawyer to handle everything. And you just show up when there are specific points to be discussed and decisions to be made, or when there has to be a deposition, or when there's a settlement. Okay? That's all you want to know. The rest of the time you want to be ignorant, blissfully ignorant of the machinations of the lawsuit. Because if you start getting into the minutia of it, it'll drive you insane with worry. Even when you're in the right. Especially when you're in the right. It'll make knots in your stomach. So you don't want to do that. You want to pick the lawyer, like I said, who's number one, a fucking killer, and you don't pay cheap. You pay dear, but you pay for the right fucking killer. You know what I'm saying? And number two, you never, ever, ever want to be in the nitty-gritty of your lawsuit. Now finally, insofar as lawsuit, and this is something important. There are lots of times when you're going to want to sue somebody for something. Okay? They're going to have fucked you over, whatever, fine. A lot of times, it's better to ignore something and just move on, as opposed to getting bogged down in a lawsuit. I'm telling you from experience. A lot of times, it's just better to just say, fuck it, and just move on. And somebody did you wrong in the expression, right? They fucked you over somehow. Sometimes, quite frankly, the aggravation and the anger and the rage and the impotence that you will feel during the period of a lawsuit is so high that sometimes it's better not to take on that cost. Sometimes it's better to just say, fine, fuck it, move on. Yeah. And that's a bitter lesson that I had to learn. But a lot of times, you see, the expense and aggravation and the emotional investment that you will put into a lawsuit is going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you a lot. And some of these injuries you're not going to get over. I can tell you right now that I have, emotional scars, if you will, from lawsuits. Yeah, fucking A. And I can feel them still, Shit that happened, 15, 20 odd years ago. Yeah. And it still bugs me. It still aggravates me. I think about it for a moment and just my blood begins to boil. Yeah. And I think to myself, if I had to do it over, would I have done it? No. Because there were periods of my life where I was completely locked into this lawsuit. And it just sucked all of the life out of my life. It was this black hole that sucked everything away. And when it was finally done, it was sort of like I was like coming out of some sort of prison. A prison of my own making. Okay? If you can't, how can I put this? I don't want to say that you should be a pushover. You shouldn't be a pushover. And you shouldn't be afraid of doing a lawsuit. Not at all. And if there's enough money involved and you're in the right, fucking A, go all the way. Go all the way. Fuck over the guy who has to be fucked over. I'm not saying, be a pushover. But what I am saying is that know when it's just not worth it. Okay? And that's different for each person. And sometimes you get an injury or you get fucked over for whatever reason, and it's just not worth it. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes it's your very fucking survival. The lawsuit that went on for 14 months, yeah, that was for my fucking survival. It was a lot of fucking money at play. Okay? money that I had been working on since before then. If I just, rolled over, I would have lost basically 3 years worth of investment in time and money. Fuck no, was I going to roll over on that fucking thing, right? I went all the way, I literally got to the door of the judge and we settled, okay? But it was 14 fucking months and it was hard, okay? So you got to be sure that if you decide to go, that it's necessary, that it is existentially necessary. Don't go into a lawsuit just for shits and giggles, okay? You go into a lawsuit, you better know that you have to. And you have to know when you're going to settle. What number can the other guy give you? And you'll say, okay, I'll settle. It's important. You have to know it beforehand. As soon as you launch a lawsuit, you got to know, what's the magic number that I'll say, enough, I'm done, I'm good, let's move on, okay? Have that number. And don't take this shit lightly, but don't be afraid of it, okay? Believe me, getting into a lawsuit, it's a lot like losing your virginity, before you lost your virginity, it was like a big deal, right? After you lost it, it was like, it's just fucking, right? Same with a lawsuit. Okay, don't take it as a be-all, end-all. It's not that big of a deal. It happens all the time. And remember, 97% of cases are settled. Okay, the whole civil justice system is designed to get people to settle. Okay, and settle, and once you're settled, pop the champagne and then move on and forget about it. Okay? Okay, hope this helps.